Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. Today I will be making one of my family recipes, which is called polskie gołąbki, also called cabbage rolls, or some people say pigs in a blanket. So let's get started. Okay guys, so what I have here, I have about a 2-pound head of cabbage, and this was the biggest one I could find in the grocery store. If you can find a bigger one, that's great. So what I'm going to do first, since this is taking a little bit of time, about 1.5 hours, 1 to 1.5 hours, is I already started heating a big pot of water, and I'm going to add some salt to my water. About 2 teaspoons. You want it nice and salty so the cabbage can absorb some of that salt water, and it's going to give it some taste. So I'm going to put the cabbage in there. I'm going to cover it up and we're going to let the cabbage cook. Okay, so while the cabbage is cooking, I'm going to start on sauteing some onions and some mushrooms. I'm going to preheat my saucepan, and I'm going to put about 3 tablespoons of olive oil in here. Get it nice and hot. And then we can add our onions. I already cut them up ahead of time because onions always make me cry. So I like to do them before I start filming so I don't cry in my videos. I also have about 2 cups of rice. I cooked that rice for about 10 to 15 minutes. I don't like the rice raw because sometimes the rice does not really cook through when you put it raw in your gołąbki or cabbage rolls. So this one is still has some bite to it, and then it's going to finish cooking in my cabbage rolls, and it's going to take some of the flavors that we're going to have in there. Okay, so we're going to add our onions. And we're going to cook them for about a minute. Okay, in the meantime, I'm just going to chop up my mushrooms. And I have some portobello mushrooms here. Give it a nice, let me get a different knife. This one is really dull. We're going to chop them up. Don't have to be perfect. I'm going to add them to our mushrooms, to our onions, sorry guys. This dish does take about 3 to 4 hours in total because you have to cook the cabbage. You have to take the cabbage leaves apart and roll all your cabbage rolls, and then you're gonna cook it in the oven for about 1.5 hours. So you definitely want to cut out a good chunk out of your morning or day whenever you want to make cabbage rolls. I always like to make a couple more. and just freeze them. I don't take the bottoms of the mushroom off. I cook them whole. I use all of the mushroom. Some people take them off. I use all of it. Some are tiny. So in case you guys were wondering, that's where some of my accent comes from. I do have Polish as well as German roots. Mostly we cooked Polish though in our family, lots of Polish dishes. I'm going to give it a stir. We're going to get the onions nice caramelized. And then once I have all my mushrooms in here, I will season it with a little bit salt and pepper. I wiped off my mushrooms a little bit. I do not wash my mushrooms. Because they do soak up a lot of the water if you wash your mushrooms. So you just want to, with a damp cloth, just wipe them off. I'm going to turn down the heat a little bit. All right, The rest of my mushrooms are going to go into the onions. I'm going to let this cook for another 2 to 3 minutes. Okay, while this is cooking, I will add some salt and pepper, and I will post all the ingredients in my description below, guys. As well as the amount of ingredients. Okay, while this is continuing to brown, I have a bowl, and I will add to my bowl about 1 pound of ground beef. And to that we're going to add 1 egg. I like to crack it in a little glass dish, so just in case if I get any eggshells in there, I can always remove them easily. Okay, this is about ready. We're going to give it another minute. Okay, to my meat, I'm going to add my rice. And I'm going to add about, let's see, I like to eyeball it. About 1.5 cups of rice. If you mix it up and you see you would like a little bit more rice into it, you can always add more. Okay, so my onions and my mushrooms are now nice and brown. I'm going to turn off my heat. And I will add this to my meat rice mixture right here.
Yeah.
Now, like I said, the rice is not fully cooked. I cooked it for about 10 minutes and it will absorb a lot of the flavors from the meat, from the mushrooms, and from the onion. So it's going to have a really good flavor. Okay, we're going to let this cool off for just a minute, and I'm going to go get some gloves. Okay, so my onions and mushrooms are nice and cool, and now we're just gonna mix that all up. I like to put on some gloves just because it gets like super sticky and a little messy. You don't have to put on gloves, just make sure you wash your hands really well. Okay, we're gonna mix this up. There's the egg. And the egg is just acting basically a little bit as a binder as well. My gloves are starting to slide. Getting messy. And I use the 93% fat in the ground beef. You can use 80. You can use the, I think it's sirloin ground beef. Whatever you prefer and whatever you have at home. Like I said, the rice will definitely absorb some of the fat from the meat. Okay, I think this is pretty well combined. So I'm going to cover this up and I will put it in the refrigerator for about an hour until my cabbage is all nice and tender. Okay, so my cabbage is nice and tender. So now you want to have some sturdy utensils to get your cabbage out of the water because it is really heavy. I got 2 big spoons, like 2 big serving spoons. I'm going to let it drip out a little bit and then I'm going to transfer it on my baking sheet. Okay, there we go. Okay, I'm going to keep my water just because sometimes when you start peeling off your leaves, the middle is not quite as tender yet. So once we get more to the core of the cabbage, we will see if we're going to need the water to continue cooking the rest of the cabbage or not. Okay, I'm going to turn it around and I'm going to cut out the core. You can let it cool off for a couple minutes because it is quite hot. I'm just going to handle it carefully. Okay. I'm going to take out the core. Get you guys a little closer here. Then I'm going to start peeling off the leaves of the cabbage. Now the big ones, the first ones that are not too nice, I can just lay on the bottom of the pan. And then I'm definitely going to keep the ones that I can wrap my meat mixture in. Make like a little bed for my cabbage rolls. Cut off a little bit more of the core here. Okay. You want to be really gentle with your leaves because they are really tender and they are falling apart pretty easily. Now if they rip a little bit, it's not a big deal. Okay, there we go. And let me get a little plate so I can put my cabbage leaves on a separate plate. I'm going to cover this up, put it to the side. Oh, this one looks really nice. Look at that, it's just coming off. So my cabbage hat, since it's not a really big one, was for about an hour in the salt water, simmering away, and looks like that was a good enough amount of time. Oh, and those are going to be tiny ones. We're going to cover those up with those tiny little leaves. Can put them here on the side. Okay. I mean, it really is all nice and tender in here. I'm going to let this one cool off, and the tiny little leaves we're going to leave so I can cover them the cabbage rolls later on with. I'm going to put that to the side. The next step is we're going to start wrapping our little cabbage rolls. Okay. So what you want to do is, I like to use my big spoon. There's my meat mixture. Oh, what I forgot to tell you guys. In one saucepan, I already started cooking one family-size can of a creamy condensed tomato soup. And this tomato soup I'm going to use to cover our cabbage rolls. So this is ready to go over here. It's already nice and warm, so that way it cuts down on the cooking time. So I'm going to take a nice spoon of our meat mixture. I'm going to put it in here. If it's a little bit too much, take a little bit out, since we have smaller leaves and bigger leaves. And then you want to take the ends and tuck them in a little bit, and then just roll up your little cabbage rolls, and there you go. And then we're going to start tucking them in. It's going to be really good. You can put like one of those little leaves in here. Can break it up a little bit, just so I can cover up the bottom of the baking dish. There we go. And once the leaves are starting to get a little bit bigger, you can use a little bit of your meat mixture. Tuck in your sides and then just roll them up. It's a pretty big leaf right here. I'm gonna put a little bit more meat in there. I'm gonna tuck in my sides. There we go. See, this one is a little bit torn, but that's okay. You can still use it. Now, if you have a core that's pretty big, you can just cut off this end right here so you don't have this hard piece of cabbage. I'm gonna roll this in this way. There we go. And we have room for just one more. That's perfect. I have one more leaf left. I'm going to cut this end out as well. Let's see if I can squeeze another tiny one. It's a little bit too much meat for this tiny little leaf. Okay, there we go. So now what we're going to do is we're going to bring our leaves over here. I have the tomato soup. So I'm going to bring my cabbage rolls over here. I'm going to give it another good stir. And then we're going to pour our tomato soup into the cabbage rolls. You want them nice covered with your soup. All right, that's pretty good. There we go. So now you're going to take your little leaves and you're just going to layer them over your cabbage rolls. And how we serve them in our house is if you have some mashed potatoes, take a big scoop of mashed potatoes and then put your cabbage roll or two on your mashed potatoes and a nice big heaping spoon of that soup sauce. It is so good. All right, so this is all nicely covered. And now I'm going to put it into the oven at 350 degrees for about an hour and a half. And then we're going to come back and see how they turn out. Okay guys, so here are our cabbage rolls, polskie gołąbki. Just came out of the oven. They look great. The cabbage is nice and brown on top. I love when it's a little bit crispy. But the cabbage rolls are nice and tender in the sauce. So I made a little bit of mashed potatoes. And this is how we serve them right here. And then you just take some of your soup and pour it over your mashed potatoes and your cabbage rolls. There you go. Smacznego!